How did you end up in Hatriot?
I used to play in a band locally in Modesto called Cranial Damage. We had played for quite some time, and I had met Nick because his band Oscar I would always come into town. We'd play together, and obviously I knew who his dad was. By chance, his dad ended up coming down and watching the very last show I played with my first band. We opened for Hyrax over at the Virtual, and he came up to me and approached me and complimented my guitar playing, and basically I just took it as, oh, cool. Got to close this chapter of my life on a cool note. Zetro comes up and says, you're a great guitar player. That's a great way to end the story. What I didn't expect was him getting my number and calling me about 2 weeks later, and yeah, that's kind of how Hatriot came to be. I had written some songs in my previous band that hadn't really been released yet, and he threw vocals over them, and it sounded great. A lot of the guys, from what he told me, said, they thought he rejoined Exodus back then. So he, Hatriot came to be out of that.
How do you get your guitar tone?
I'd like to keep things simple. I have a PV Triple X right now. I just plug in that thing. I kind of have the mids set a little high there. You want to have mids for some definition. Definitely lots of high end and bass, but I try to keep my rig as simple as possible. EQ settings and whatnot vary on depending on where you're playing. If you're playing a big hall, obviously you're going to want to do some tweaking, maybe less bass or less treble, depending on how it echoes in there.
Every so often I'll see like a guitar player who has like a really like trebly, really piercing tone. Any advice for those kind of guitarists who want a good tone? They want it to be trebly, but they don't want it to be piercing.
Yeah, mids. They'll save your life. The mids will save your life. A lot of guys like that scoop tone because, Pantera and Metallica did it. But they used mids too. Talk to your sound guy too. Let him know, hey, I use a lot of treble, and you see if he can fix it up. Or, if you're just running dry and just not miking your amp, then, yeah, you're going to want to boost your mids. Another good thing to do when you're playing with lots of treble is don't use a lot of gain. It does involve making you have to play a lot cleaner. It challenges you as a guitar player, but in the long run, it'll make you a better guitarist and not make you sound like you're playing through a telephone. The boss metal zone, stay away from it.
Why?
It's that's the king of the too much treble. See a lot of guys using it, and you can't really hear the definition of the notes they're hitting. It just sounds like they're playing through static. Never was a big fan of the pedal.
It's funny you say that because I'm actually holding the metal zone in my hand. The reason why I got it is because like I heard they can. I used to be in a doom metal band, and I heard you can get like a really good doom metal tone from this.
Yeah, if you tweak it enough, you may be able to. I do know doom metal does kind of have more of the fuzzy sound. Rather than a more clean one, but it all depends on what you want. At the end of the day, it's what the guitarist wants, but what I'm saying is just pure opinion.
How do you feel about 80s metal?
Love it. Learning solos, definitely listened to a lot of bands like Dawkins and a lot of the hair bands of the 80s. I love a lot of the hair bands, and obviously thrash metal came out of the 80s too, so definitely a big influence there. And even your Iron Maidens, Judas Priest, Accept, Saxon, all the earlier stuff really more came out late 70s, but yeah, 80s metal is kind of the bread and butter. It's where everything came from, so definitely listen to it.
How do you feel about Degent?
Not really the biggest fan of it, to be quite honest. I think it's great that a lot of these kids are really into the off time stuff. That's always cool. My main problem is, Periphery came out and they did it, and then Veil of Maya came out and they were doing it. Well, those were kind of the first Degent bands, quote unquote, or have that similar sound, really. Aside from Meshuggah, who's been doing that shit since '95. I think the first bands that came out with it really, were trying to do something different, and it's cool. But now it's just become, everybody sounds like everybody in that genre, and I don't see it lasting, unfortunately. And it would be really cool to see what, someone could do with it, but it's just kind of hard right now because it seemed to get oversaturated very fast.
Do you play any other instruments?
I play a Greek instrument. It's a lute from the island of Crete. Aside from heavy metal, I also play Cretan folk music. Um, my father actually plays the accompanying instrument. That's how I got into playing it. And I also do play a lot of gigs with that, mainly weddings, baptisms, what have you, dances, that kind of thing. I really enjoy playing that as well, as much as I do metal.
All right. So you said that's a Greek instrument?
Yeah, it's called a laguta. In English, most people call it the Cretan lute.
Okay. You ever trying to mix that with heavy metal?
Everyone asks me to do it. I don't know. I've thought about it, but I don't know. A little part of me inside it bugs me because, like, I love those music so much, and I like to keep them pure. And maybe eventually I might throw it in. I just, they're just so different music. It's such different styles of music too. I don't know how it would sound.
Are you self-taught or did you take lessons?
Self-taught. I got my guitar when I was 12 years old, locked myself up in my room with a steady diet of Iron Maiden and Metallica tapes, and kind of progressed from there. The way I started playing fast was, I would steal tape. My older sisters would listen to metal when they were teenagers, and they'd have a lot of cassette tapes set aside. I'd sneak in the room and steal them. One day I stole Slayer, Rain in Blood, and that's kind of how I started wanting to play fast.
Awesome. Your sisters are awesome.
Yeah, every interview I like to tell everybody that they're the reason why I got into metal, because they'll kill me otherwise.
Awesome. Let's see. What other questions can I ask you? Do you write any lyrics for the albums, the Hatriot albums?
The last two, no. This one, I am kind of more involved with the lyrics. I've always been more of a music guy. All the music, I basically compose it. When Zet was in the band, I left the lyric writing to him. Obviously, he got the better credential for the job. But now that he's back in Exodus and Cody's taken over on vocals, it's a team effort. Cody actually writes a lot like his dad, which is tight. He actually just wrote lyrics for a new song that we should be releasing here pretty soon. It's called Frankenstein Must Die, and he actually wrote most of the lyrics for that, and it came out really, really good. Very similar flow to his pops. I guess it is hereditary.
Who pays for the album, the record label or the band?
When you get signed, what happens is the record label will give you what's called a record advance. They pay you, and you use that money to record your album, and through record sales is how you pay the label back. So usually the standard way of recording through a label. So basically, with album sales, you pay them back. They get, it's like, here's the money you owe us. You have to sell so and so many units to pay us back the money. And then after you pay them back, that's when you yourself start making royalties off of it.
So is this like a typical way of doing things, or are there record
labels? Yeah, absolutely. That's the standard. Just about any record label you'll get with will do it that way.
So do the record labels help you with setting up tours, or is that something like the bands do on their own, or they have to find a different organization to help them with that?
Normally record labels don't. I'm not sure. Our record label is actually strictly a distribution label, so they'll get your album out. But as far as touring goes, usually our management will deal with that. We don't really tour all that often, because the music industry, it necessarily isn't what it used to be, where you could make a living off of doing that. And a lot of us, have other expenses, and going on the road would be just toxic for the band. But when we do go on tour, it's something that usually management and us kind of put together, and we go out and kick some ass that way. Also make sure it works with our schedules, make sure we can get the time off for it. That whole thing. It's a little bit, when you're in a band that tours constantly, usually it's done through a booking agent. However, a guy who sets up a show for you, sets up a tour for you with another group of bands, and that's usually normally a different organization than, say, the record label. I do know that some record labels do help you get a booking agent or have a booking agent on staff and give you a tour advance.
Was it hard finding a job that accommodates your touring schedule?
You know, it's not that hard. You know, like I said, we don't really leave for that long if we do go on the road. I think the longest we've been gone was like maybe a week when we went out to Europe. Um, Usually the work's pretty cool about it. You know, you just let them, just like taking a vacation, basically. You let them know a couple months in advance, hey, I'm going to be gone these days. I'm doing this. And usually it's not a problem. Normally they don't care. It's not that hard for me or any other member of the band, really. You know, just if you have like a day job, it's just like requesting a vacation off. With, you know, they have more incentive to give it to you off because they know you got to go on tour. You let them know that part too.
Yeah. You might have already answered this, but how much influence do you have on recording the last album?
A lot. When you're in the studio, it's just a different beast. You're just about music and anything. It's weird. You almost have like this sixth sense and absorb everything that you hear in any kind of music. You can draw influence from pretty much anything. Mainly, obviously, my main influence when I write for Hatriot or when I'm recording is obviously like Slayer and Death, you know, the heavier side of things. But I normally especially when I'm in the studio, when I'm trying to think of a cool like solo lick or something, I'll listen to anything. I'll pop the radio on and listen to fucking Justin Bieber. If I could get a cool solo lick off of it, so be it.
Oh, okay. There's a cover on the Dawn of the New Centurion. Do you remember the name of that? The name of the song?
We did a cover of the band Crocus. We did Midnight Maniac.
Midnight Man. Isn't that kind of like a hair metal song or a hair metal band?
Crocus was one of those bands. They came out in the late '70s, early '80s, kind of with you know, the more like the Accepts and, you know, Iron Maiden, Saxons. They weren't really necessarily a hair band, so to speak. They were kind of like one of those bands that was, you know, too dirty to, you know, be a hair band, but too slick to be, you know, a heavier. They're kind of right in the middle. They're a really good band. Their album Metal Rendezvous is actually pretty awesome, and it was cool because you know, that's one of the bands, you know, a lot of the Bay Area thrashers would listen to back in the day, you know, like Eat the Rich or Long Stick Goes Boom, or, you know, a lot of cool songs they wrote. Midnight Maniac happened to be one of them. The reason why we recorded it is I used to always play the opening riff at band practice all the time, and Zet would look over and smile and go, I remember that song. And I eventually drove him crazy. He goes, if we cover that song, you have to promise me to never play it again. So we ended up having enough time to lay that one down, and we did. And glad we did it. Actually, you know, it has our own little flavor to it. A little bit heavier, a little bit more shredding at the end, but I'm glad we did it. It's cool. It should add some contrast, I think. You know, heavy ass thrash metal band does a Crocus cover. You know, it's shit that no one really does anymore.
What's the worst part of touring?
You know, we haven't, like I said, we haven't toured like a lot, so this probably will change the more on the road time I get. But the worst part really is being out of your element. Just being out of your element, you know. You want to, there's just little things that you want and you just can't get them. That's the worst thing I've experienced. You know, you don't know where the fuck you're at, kind of thing. You know, you just know where the venue is and GPS the freeway to the next venue.
What's the best part of touring?
The crowds. Just playing in front of people, you know. There isn't a high on this planet like it. You're just sitting up there and just seeing a bunch of people entertained by music that you wrote. You know, it's really rewarding. Because, you know, anytime I write a song, I don't really write it to impress anyone. I go about it like, look, I play music for myself, and if it impresses me, that's good enough. But when I see a lot of people that are impressed by it too, it makes me feel, you know, good. It's like I can relate with these people on something. It's, you know, it kind of unifies everybody. It makes me closer, brings me closer, and unifies me with people.
Yeah, speaking of highs, did you do any drugs while you're on tour?
Nope. Only thing I do is I'll chew some tobacco and drink, and that's about it.
That's
I
cool.
don't even drink that heavily either. No, no, not really. Never really was much of a drug user.
That's cool. Did anybody like just offer you free drugs?
Oh, all the time, all the time. And I don't even count pot because everyone does that. But I've been offered that. I don't even know how many. Everyone automatically assumes I smoke pot when I'm outside. They'll just like hand that shit to me. Um, oh, I've been offered all kinds of drugs. I've been offered blow. I've been offered acid. I've been offered shrooms. I've been offered anything, and I'm just like, yeah, man, I'm good. I'll keep my wits about me. I'll go hang out.
So what you're saying is, if you're homeless and you're drug addicted, best just pick up a guitar and start playing.
Fuck, man. Yeah, get yourself an opening a gig at one of them shows, and hell, if I saw a homeless guy opening and he wanted to do hella drugs, I'd be like, hey, come on in. I could probably find you some. Nah, I wouldn't do that. I don't. Drugs are bad, dude. I don't fuck with any of that, and I don't like it when people do.
Yeah.
Like I said, there's some exceptions, like there's some that you obviously can tell it's not an issue with the person, but the thing I've noticed is, the people, you do see a lot of people, and you can kind of tell that they're just torn from it, and it sucks. Drug addiction's shitty. I never wanted to. I don't like really being associated with that too much.
Trump or Hillary?
Neither.
I'm in the same boat, man.
Neither. I really liked Gary Johnson, but I'm not sure about him either. If I had to vote between the two, I'd probably just choose. I would choose Hillary just out of the sheer fact, yeah, she's corrupt, but every politician is corrupt. That's just the reality of it. Donald Trump doesn't know what the fuck he's doing. He's, it's basically. I think his is just a publicity stunt gone wrong. I mean, if he wins, nothing's going to happen. Congress is going to override everything he tries to propose. However, I can't picture him, getting a call at 4 a.m, having to go, to an immediate action through Congress if the country is under attack. I can't really picture him being the one to really make a plan to organize order in times of chaos if God forbid, anything like that happens.
What are your musical influences?
Oh, I could go on the list. We'll break it down. For writing, for songwriting, obviously, for riffs I write, Chuck Schuldiner, Jeff Hanneman, Kerry King from Slayer, Gary Holt from Exodus, Eric Peterson, basically any guitarist from a Bay Area thrash band. It's a huge influence on the riff writing. My picking styles I get obviously from James Hetfield. I love down picking when I, chug. Soloing wise, I actually do a lot more. Annie LaRocque from King Diamond is a big influence. George Lynch from Dokken, I love his style of playing. Eddie Van Halen, I love his just style of playing. Lots of hairband guitars. Red Beach is another one. Vito Bratta. There's another guitarist who's really underrated, Harry Cody. Paul Gilbert. The list goes on and on for like licks. you can find a lot of those sick ass lick videos on YouTube now, which is cool. And my influences spawn out from even outside of metal. I do listen to a lot of hardcore too. Influenced by bands like Cro-Mags and Leeway, Marauder, Terror. Those kind of bands also help give me a more of aggressive edge if I'm writing an aggressive song. I listen to some of that. I listen to a lot of punk rock, Misfits, Dead Kennedys, Fear, that kind of stuff. I even go all the way out to jazz. I like Joe Pass a lot. And obviously the Cretan folk music. I listen to a lot of that. Favorite artists, I'll say them. Thanasis Kordalos is definitely a big artist, favorite for me. Zacharis Melesanakis, Mudakis. Basically a lot. In the Cretan music world, there's a lot of greats, and that's kind of the area of what I listen to in that. I'm a scatterbrain man. I go everywhere with music. You'll find anything in my CD collection, for anything as heavy as fucking Hate Eternal to something as light as Wham. I don't care. I listen to whatever.
Do you have hope for the future of metal?
I do. There's a lot of hungry bands out there right now, and the bands we all love. They're as much as it sucks to say it, they're getting old. How a lot of the guys, the dudes in, the Slayers, the Megadeths, the Metallicas, the Anthrax, all those guys are, in their mid to late 50s now. They're not going to be around or able to do this for much longer. And fortunately now there's a lot of hungry young metal bands that are in the vein of like the old school, have that attitude, have that aggression, but also have a flavor of their own. Um, Even though they're more popular in the hardcore scene, a band that is a newer band that I think is great, and I hope to see them succeed a lot in the future, is Power Trip. They are awesome. Revocation is another one that's more of a thrashier band that I'm really into. Recently got into another band called Last 10 Seconds of Life. They're a little slower. They're really hard to pinpoint of what they sound like, but they're very slow and heavy, and I really dig their stuff. There's a lot of good bands coming out. There's a lot of them, and I just and obviously a band that I think is doing great right now is Fallujah. They're kind of they're kind of putting their own brand of death metal together. It's actually pretty cool what they're doing. And Cody and Nick are also the other members of the band, like Rings of Saturn a lot. Rings of Saturn is a pretty cool, weird technical band, a million miles an hour. There's a lot of bands that are out there. Like I said, there's a lot of bands that are out there that are really hungry, and hopefully they respectively take the throne of the guys of the past, because good things can't last forever, and it's up to the younger generation to keep it going.
I was trying to find your guys' website, and like the the Wikipedia sends me to hatriotmetal.com, and it's just this. The first thing I see is like this. What is it? This royal and lavish destination wedding opportunities in Jaipur.
Yeah, I think they must have sold our domain. I don't know what's going on there. Usually, for information on Hatriot, we usually just do it through social media now. Most bands are a lot easier.
Have you heard of any technical death metal?
Oh, I actually got my technical death metal kick a long time ago. I remember in around like 2003, 2004, there's a ton of those bands coming out. Gorgasm was one of them. I remember I heard Masticate to Dominate. I was in high school still. That album blew me away. Necrophage, just obviously, that one album, man. They made an album before that, but, Epitaph, that album's amazing. I love it. I listen to a lot of tech death. Gorguts are kind of the originators of it. Gorguts and Suffocation, even though they're more on the brutal side, but lots of tech death. I used to only listen to that at certain times. Oh, another cool one is Defeated Sanity. They're a really cool tech death band.
Huh, cool. Yeah, the tech bands I've been listening to are what is it? Faceless.
Oh yeah.
Where are the other two? Crap. Oh, Obscura.
Obscura is another good one, yeah. Actually, the guitarist from Necrophagist, not Muhammad, but the other ones formed Obscura, and that album, Cosmic Genesis, I remember when that came out, I bought it. That album blew me away. Another sick one is Origin. Origin is another sick tech death. Bay Area Cats, too.
Oh my god, I'm drawing a blank of this one technical death metal band. They're from Canada.
Despised Icon, Gorguts.
There's probably way too much for you to actually find the one I'm looking for. Oh, whatever. Yeah. Bro. I'll put it in the low bar later.
Yeah, there's a Canada always had those just Canada's metal is it's always just kind of off to the left a little bit. It's just always really different. It's similar but extremely different from everything else that was coming out. That's why I always liked a lot of the stuff. Like even for thrash metal, Annihilator was always just a little more technical than some of the thrash bands coming out at the time.
You guys working on a new album or something?
We are currently writing our third album. We're really taking our time with it, trying to make it, something extremely special. We are planning on releasing a lyric video, like I was stating earlier. It was a song called "Frankenstein Must Be Destroyed." Um, Deals with prisoners on death row. We're hoping to have that lyric video released here pretty soon, probably in the next few weeks. So definitely look out for that. We did just release a song called Carnival of Execution. You can find that on YouTube. It's the first song featuring Cody on vocals that he wrote the lyrics for. Yeah, we're definitely definitely staying busy. I'm trying to get that third album completely written and hopefully get ready to go into the studio early next year.
Yeah, I think it's about everything. Thank you for your
All
time.
right, cool. Hey, anytime, dude. Take it easy.